All right. Good evening, everyone. Once again, our discussion portion is done. Is 8, so we are going to jump into our discussion for tonight. I appreciate everybody's time. This is Eretmis Cyber Chat. We do this every Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, but tonight we are starting 8 p.m. Eastern, and I still appreciate everybody being able to make it. And tonight's discussion is a very interesting one that should be dear to everybody who is either in the security space already or aspiring to be in the cybersecurity space. And is we are going to be talking about cloud security, right? So without wasting much time, we are going to jump in. I'm Dr. Emmanuel Edu. I'm a former United States Army captain. I'm a QSA and the CEO of a QSA company based out of New York, a cybersecurity consulting firm called Eretmis Inc. And also, I'm the founder of Eretmis Academy that is bringing you cyber chats every Friday night. I'm a former professor of University of Maryland Global Campus and CTC Central Texas College. So I appreciate everybody's time for joining us. Now, Eretmis Academy, we are partners with CompTIA. And what that means is that we offer 20% discount on all vouchers to our Eretmis family members. So if you are joining us for the first time, you are part of the family. If you're in a WhatsApp group or you've taken any of our courses, you are also part of our family. So if you want to write any of the certification exams, you can reach out via email. And this is how it happens. We don't have the vouchers at hand that we're going to hand out. We purchase through our CompTIA portal that affords us the 20%. So mostly we will have you send the amount. I think it's 404 for 404. I stand to be corrected for the total amount. But for the 20%, it brings it down to 330 or somewhere around that figure, right? So then we will purchase on your behalf and send you the voucher number. So that is how that works. Now, also for everybody on here, if you're looking to sit for, or if you're looking to renew any certification that you've had in the past, either CompTIA certifications or ISE Square or ISACA, you can use what we call continuous education now points to renew rather than resitting for the exam, right? So if you type Team Live in the chat and you take a screenshot of it, that counts as one continual educational points or continuous educational points, anyhow you want to call it. The different certification bodies, they call it different names, but it's simply showing that you are continuously learning and you're improving yourself in the security space. And this every cyber chat counts as 1 point, and depending on whichever certification you want to renew, some you have to get 20 points within 2 years or 3 years, and like the numbers will vary. But for the number of cyber chats that you've joined, if you were typing in Team Live and taking a screenshot of it, you would have had, way more than enough to recertify, right? So that out of the way, we have a WhatsApp group. We are almost full, but we have people going in and out. So you can also join the WhatsApp group to stay up to date with all cybersecurity matters and with all the programs that we run also as well. Now, the link is going to be put in there. We are on YouTube as well. All cyber chats are posted on YouTube. Thanks to everybody. We hit 1 million subscribers already. And we encourage you to share the YouTube to your families and friends. It's a whole cybersecurity school on there on YouTube that they can go through, even if they don't have the funds to join any of our paid courses yet. They can still learn a lot from YouTube. There have been a lot of Eretmis family members who got jobs through just the YouTube channel without even taking any of our courses, right? But that is not enough. You should, at least if you had some background before and you needed specific topics that you can go through to, broaden your horizon on those specific topics. And then also we have previous, discussions with other students who went through the program, got jobs. So you can listen to some of the tips and tricks, and then also what they are doing on the job. That'll also help you during your interviews as well, right? So tonight we are going to look at cyber news, one cyber news, and then we'll jump into our cloud security discussion for tonight, right? So in the news, cyber news tonight, Uber is in the news. And what happened? So Uber got fined in Europe. They got fined 290 million, 290 million euro, right? Because they move some data around. You know, in Europe they don't play with their data privacy. They move some data around without the proper, notification, and that is how they ended up, this way. So it's not they didn't get breached or anything, simply because they moved data around, and Uber drivers data for folks in Europe continent. I think it was Amsterdam and France. So they got hit with this fine, and Uber has money, so obviously they'll be able to pay this off. But this goes to show you that it is really no joke when they talk about their GDPR, and also for the different countries, they have their own data privacy protection. We call it standards, which together they came together and they came up with the general one for GDPR for the whole entire Europe, right? So Uber got in trouble, but with that, we are going to move into our discussion for tonight. And our previous discussions, we talked about the cybersecurity entry-level course. If you're trying to start a career in the cybersecurity space, regardless whether you have some, few trainings here and there, and you really don't know where you are getting with that, or you are doing self-studies and you are stuck, the cybersecurity entry-level course is your gateway into the cybersecurity space, right? And we can say this on authority. There are a lot of folks on here who've gone through this and who are working as cybersecurity professionals, and they started off with no background in cybersecurity or IT, right? So this course comes with the training, which covers the knowledge piece, the skills. You are going to go through, getting your hands dirty, using some of the cybersecurity tools, popular tools out there, and then you go through internship as well, where you work on real-world security projects. And then we help with job placement assistance, where we guide you through interview prep for interviews that you're going to go to. We're doing mock interviews, and then also before interviews, your resume, we help you go through that as well. Now, if you're in the cybersecurity space already, or you've been in IT for a while and you're looking to specialize, one of the most lucrative areas in the cybersecurity space is the payment card security compliance space. So we have our PCI DSS training. Eretmis Inc., our mother company, is a PCI QSA company. So things that we are teaching you in the PCI class, they are things that we do on a daily basis. So we didn't just learn them from somewhere and just pushing it down to you. But this is the best PCI course out there. So if you're looking to specialize, you can get into that also as well. And for folks who've done some self-study, you have some certifications, you have Security Plus, you've gone through some GRC training somewhere, and you still don't feel like you are ready for the job market. And if you've not gone through an internship like this one, I can tell you for a fact you're not ready for the job market, right? You can interview all day, but you're still going to hit that, block. Even if they like you and they give you the job, you can't talk your way through the job. You have to do it. So the internship is what is going to set you apart from people who are just learning with no actual doing, right? Because this is going to help you on the job, not just for interviews. Interviews, you are going to speak to projects that you've worked on, and on the job, there's also going to show you'll be able to actually perform, right? And you are doing this is 2 months or 8 weeks that you are going to go through and work on different security projects, 10 major security projects, and that is going to sharpen your skills and also let you see in real time how these projects are done, right? So you can, get on that. Our next one is starting on 21st September, next month. So 2 days. I think tomorrow is the last day of August. So day after tomorrow, we will be in September. So 21st of September, and then also for our conference coming live, Maryland, 25th to 27th. Kindly make sure you are showing your intent. We are still, rolling out the link for you to just show your intent. Hey, I'm interested in this. I'm going to show up. And that will help us to finalize our planning part of this also as well. So appreciate everybody's time. Now we are going to jump into cloud security. And with cloud security, guess what we are starting with? Data breach. So Capital One, everybody on here knows Capital One, right? Their catchphrase is what? Who knows Capital One's catchphrase? Anyone?
What's in your wallet?
Of course. What's in your wallet? Right. So in this scenario, what was in your wallet was a breach. That was what was in their wallet. So Capital One got breached, and this is not this is an old cyber news. This happened 2019 thereabout. So they got breached. And why are we discussing Capital One's breach whilst we are talking about cloud security, right? Because it borders on cloud security. So when they got breached, the attacker got their hands on. It was a lady actually. She got her hand on 100 million Capital One credit card applications and other information from customers. So how did that happen? Right. So this is, I just posted this on there for us all to see the date. This was I knew the story, but I had to find where I could pick the source from. So this is from CNN, reported by Rob, and this was Tuesday 30th 2019. So 2019, Capital One got breached. I think the breach actually happened 3 months before they got notice of it. And it was somebody who randomly saw this online and notified them, and they notified the FBI. Right. But this breach was, the attacker didn't just breach Capital One's on-prem network. They breached Capital One's AWS setup that they had, right? So that is why we are looking at this, to let you know that cloud security is no joke. Now, let's look at some of the details of this. So this is one of the biggest data breaches ever. And the attacker gained access to 100 million Capital One customers' accounts and credit card applications so earlier this year. I mean, this was in 2019, right? So the attacker, Miss, I'm not sure. Thompson, she was accused of bridging their AWS system and stealing all this information. So it was, I think, 140,000 social security numbers, 1 million Canadian social security insurance numbers, 80,000 bank account numbers, in addition to a number of undisclosed personal information like your address, credit card score, credit limit, balance, and all that information, right? So this was reported by the Department of Justice. So we are going to look at the details of this, what actually happened. So this hacker who got her hand on this information, for some reason, she was just posting this online with her real name and her real profile. I don't know what the issue was with that, but that was what made her. That was how they caught her, right? So she was posting online, "Hey, I have Capital One's information," And so this 33-year-old, she lived in Seattle, had previously worked as a tech company software engineer for Amazon Web Services, not just Amazon Web Services. So AWS, she used to work for AWS as a software engineer. So she knew AWS, a little bit more than your usual, maybe AWS solutions architect, right? And AWS happens to be the cloud hosting provider for Capital One at that time. And I think they are still, maybe they didn't check on that one, but probably they are still using AWS. So she gained access by exploiting a misconfigured web application firewall, according to the court filings, right? So all this information came out during the court filings, and the breach affected 100 million people in the United States and about 6 million people in Canada, according to Capital One, right? So we are building our case. Now, the AWS system that was obviously hacked, is where all this information was housed. And it was due to, we looked at that already, cloud firewall configuration vulnerability, right? So this lady, she knew the AWS setup pretty well, right? And I don't know what prompted her to target Capital One. I didn't get that information, or they didn't disclose that, right? So there was this flaw in there, and she took advantage of it. And the actual attack that she executed is called server-side request forgery. So SSRF. She did that against the AWS infrastructure uh, for Capital One, right? So we are going to get a bit technical into how this happened. So this is kind of a network diagram or a picture depiction of what really happened. So this is the attacker, step one. What did she do? Step two, step three, step four, step five, all the way to back to the attacker, right? So we have another diagram that is going to show more. But when we simply go through this, she went through, got into the metadata services, and she gained some credentials, and she was able to use the credentials to have access to the AWS S3 bucket for Capital One that housed all that information that she stole, right? And that information, eventually ended up with her, right? So this is a very simple depiction. This also kind of breaks it down even more. Step one, step two, step three. So this is just speaking to what we just discussed, right? So we are going to still get some more details into this. And reason why we are doing this is we are building a case for cloud security, right? So a company like Capital One, when this happened, guess how much they were fined? In April 2020, they were fined $80 million by Department of Finance. So Capital One is no small company. It's $1 billion company. How can this happen to them? Misconfiguration in your cloud firewall, really? Right? But they did. So this goes to show you the size of the company doesn't really matter, right? We have to, like I was explaining earlier, we always go back to the fundamentals. If the fundamentals are weak, you can pose and you can act all you want, but an attacker can easily, bulldoze their way through by not even trying, right? So this cloud firewall misconfiguration, we are going to look more into it. What were they using at that time that enabled this attacker to be able to do this? So this happened in March 2020, 22nd March to 23rd, 2019, and they got to find out in July, right? So that is when they got to find out they had an unauthorized access into their AWS setup, right? And the attacker used server-side request forgery against the AWS infrastructure. So this is actually the charge that was leveraged against this lady, right? Using SSRF against the AWS infrastructure of Capital One. So at that time, when this happened, what happened? What was the flaw in Capital One's AWS ecosystem? Capital One, they were using what we call instant metadata service. So IMDS version 1, when this occurred, right? And with IMDS version 1, IMDS version 1 is run by AWS, right? At that time, the version 1, it had no authentication enabled if you want to retrieve metadata. And the metadata is, so we are going to, come down to what can be found in metadata. So what can be found in metadata is your password, cryptographic information and all that. So if somebody gets in their credentials to log in, they'll be able to get their hands on there. But there was no authentication enabled in IMD. IMD didn't support authentication enabled. Now, obviously, AWS, they came up with IMD as version 2. I think the version 2 was there when Capital One was setting up their AWS infrastructure, right? So the attacker connected to Capital One's E2 EC2 instance, and that is how they were able to get access to the AWS metadata services to obtain the login credentials via the identity and access management services. And the scripts that she used looked something like this, right? So you're getting a little bit technical, and not to confuse anybody, but just follow the story, right? Just follow. You don't have to worry about what is all these. It doesn't, just to show you what really happened behind the scenes, but it doesn't really matter that much to the case you are trying to make. Now, whose fault was this? Was it AWS's fault or Capital One's fault? Who dropped the ball, actually? Two people, and then we're going to move on. Who dropped the ball on this one? Anyone?
Capital One.
Okay, Capital One. Anybody else thinks otherwise?
Capital One.
No, I think AWS because they AWS.
Okay, great. Okay, good. So 2 votes for Capital One being at fault, 1 vote for AWS. Mike, go ahead.
I think it's AWS since they are hosting the data.
Okay, great. So now 2 for 2. Chris, kindly go ahead.
I think it was both parties, right? Both the One and AWS. So Capital One for me is configuring their firewall, and AWS not having the capability of enabling authentication for the IDMS also.
Okay. Frank, please go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Edu, I think is both of them. I believe Capital One didn't do due diligence in engaging a third party like AWS. They have to go through process of engaging a third party. They didn't do that to check how they secure their data. And also AWS for not configuring the system very well.
Okay, great. Eliku and Jason will go and we will move forward. Please go ahead, Eliku. You are muted if you're trying to speak.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. So I would say it's both, but really more Capital One. The bigger fault lies with Capital One, because when you get like a server from AWS, there are certain responsibilities that a company has and certain responsibilities that the cloud services have as far as security is concerned. So by the company Capital One not securing, because this is at the company level, when you're looking at the data, the configuration, the setup, it's really the company doing it, not AWS. AWS is just giving you a platform, and there, I believe, up to a point, what they were providing for AWS was a hosting place, not protecting. That would be really the company IT people who had to set up all the protection around the server once they got assigned that particular space.
Okay, great. Thank you. Jason, kindly go ahead.
All right, Doc, morning. So I agree with Ms. Ileko, and I'll use your analogy that you normally use. This fault lies with Capital One. They did not configure their systems properly. So it's like you say, with the key, if you misplace your key, or if you put down your key carelessly, anyone can pick it up and use it to go into your house and take what they want. So Capital One placed the key carelessly, did not put it up securely, and now somebody has gotten into the system and had their way with it.
Okay.
That's all it comes down to.
Okay, great. Good example. So,
Yeah.
Emmanuel, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think it also depends on the service level agreement, service level agreement. AWS has Capital One. If they are to have their data also secure it, or it was the duty of Capital One to secure their own data. I think in the long run, the blame should be more on Capital One, because Capital One is not only the client for AWS. They didn't hack every other client, but it was Capital One. So the fault is from Capital One.
Good analysis. Joel, please go ahead and we'll wrap up.
Yeah, Doc, I think the first question is who was fined? Capital One was fined, not AWS, right?
Yes.
So if AWS has any role to play in this, AWS would have been fined as well. So I think it is Capital One.
Okay. Okay. You have a valid point. But before AWS was fined, if you were to discuss whose fault is this, that is what everybody has gone through. So we'll get back to that question. Hold on to that question. We will get back to it. So before we get into cloud security, where is the cloud? You know, we say cloud and make it look like it's in the sky, cloud. But frankly, the cloud is probably behind your house somewhere, right? You've probably been driving past the cloud the whole time, and you're not even aware this is part of what I'm using, right? So the cloud might look like something like this. It's simply a data center that has a bunch of servers that is being used to store, process, data, do all sort of data processing, data storage. So, and these, you see it kind of a warehouse form type, right? But it's a data center and it's located in different areas and different locations, right? There's a lot in the DMV area. I think they have the most in the United States. So the cloud is something not really like mystical that is somewhere in, we call it the cloud because you don't see it, but you are using it. So we make it look like, well, but the cloud, for anybody who is not very IT savvy and you think you're cloud, what is the cloud? If you enter the cloud, it looks like this, right? From the outside, it looks like this one right here, right? So the cloud simply is a data center that has a bunch of computers that is being used to do all sort of things. And you can rent one or two or three or a couple of these computers and use it, right, without seeing these computers. So simply in our daily lives, a similar, comparison is storage, right? If you have too much stuff at home and you don't have enough storage space, you go get a storage from all these storage companies. So they also look something like this, right? And they have spaces where you can rent a space and put your stuff in there. This is the system that the cloud is using, right? So in the IT side, some smart folks decided, can we have some computers that people can rent to store their data and to process their data, right? That is the same principles that they are using here. So this, what I'm using right now as an example, will help you to really understand who is responsible for what when it comes to the user of the cloud and the owner of the cloud, right? So without going too much into it, if you rent a storage space to put in your stuff, guess what? Like Jason was saying, they give you the key to your storage space. So if you drop the key on your way out on the street somewhere and somebody picks it, and for some reason they're able to identify your storage number, and they come in there, they open your storage and they take all your stuff, are you going to sue the storage owner? That he's the one who, for law, you can sue them and drag them here and there and try to shake them and get some money, but they are going to look at you like you are growing trees on your forehead. Nobody's going to mind you, right? Because it is their duty to make sure the whole entire facility is safe, right? unauthorized people cannot have access to the facility. But if they had your key, and your key is able to open the front door to get into the building, and they're able to get into your storage, whose fault is that? Right? But we'll get into all that as we are moving along. But if you are able to understand it from that perspective, it's easy for you to understand how the cloud system works and all that, right? In terms of who is responsible for what. So if something happens, then, it's not going to be like, well, you rented this place to me, so it's your fault. So that is when we do cloud security, we have to be able to understand this concept that I'm discussing, right? Without that, cloud security is based on who is responsible for what. So this picture also just shows you an example. Before the cloud, we were doing everything by ourselves. All the computers that we were using, all the servers we were using, they were in the premises of our company. So even if we were not in that same premise to use it, it was still owned and operated by our company, right? And then somebody thought of, what if I have one and these people don't have to, or if they need more processing or storage space and they don't have it, now they have to go buy new servers, new computers and set it up, and it's going to cost them more. What if I have, my own setup that I can rent to them? So that is how the cloud service, industry started, right? It actually started around 2006, thereabout, because Amazon ran into a problem. And that problem, little did they know it was going to be $1 billion company. That problem will eventually lead into $1 billion company, even bigger than what Amazon was doing at that time, right? So in 2006, Amazon, their servers, like the Christmas of 2006, they're about, I think, a year before that. They are 205, 204, they're about, not really exact about the date. Amazon was booming, business, everybody's buying online. There was one Christmas, Amazon servers, we nearly ran Amazon servers down to the ground. There were so much orders coming in, their servers couldn't handle it, almost couldn't handle it. And that was a very big eye-opener for Amazon. They were like, oh, shoot, if we don't build more data centers to really be able to accommodate this type of demand, we are going to run into problems. So they built more than they needed, right? So if there is more demand, they can expand. If there is less, they can, so it was elastic. They can expand. So when they use it for a year, they're like, oh, we have too much space. We can rent some to other people or rent some of this processing power to other companies, so we don't have to incur all the costs, because for maybe half of the year, if the demand is not that high, we are not using maybe all these 50,000 data centers that we have, right? We are using maybe the only 100,000 data centers minus the 50,000 over here. So they decided to come up with a way to be able to sell some of these processing power and storage power, to other companies, because they knew other companies were running into the same problem. And not all companies had the capabilities of Amazon to be able to just come up with, data centers by just, swinging their magic wand, right? Some companies don't have that capability, but if they had to buy, as they have to do like pay as you go. So they pay as they use. That will be a better business strategy for most companies. And indeed, it really is a better business strategy. So instead of your company building your own data center, you can just rent a space, storage space, processing space, and use it, processing, instance, and use it. And if you don't use it, you don't pay, right? So this is the whole idea behind the cloud business, right? It's a very lucrative business. And Amazon, because they started early, they started around 2006, and Microsoft joined 2010. So by that time, Amazon had captured most of the market. Amazon is the leading cloud service provider. Now they own 40% of the whole entire market. I think Azure, Microsoft Azure owns about 30%, and the rest is for everybody. Google and the rest, Google is next, I think the third largest, So when the list goes on, and Alibaba and the rest, down the list, I think fifth thereabout. So hopefully that gives you a very good perspective into the cloud business. Now, what is cloud security? So we've looked at how how the whole cloud business started, and cloud computing itself. We use it, and most companies are choosing to use it because it is flexible. It makes more business sense. It is good on your budget, right? It's agile. So most companies choose to go that route. Now, playing in the cloud, security is not the same. The principles of security is the same, whether on premises or on-prem or in the cloud. Principles are the same. The application of it or implementation of it is a bit different, right? Because systems that you're using on-prem, that worked, because now it is not on-prem, so you have to adjust and find different ways that will make it work. So that is the problem that we run into. That is why we have cloud security as like a whole science within the cybersecurity space, right? So working in the cloud, almost the same as working on-prem, but protecting everything in the cloud a bit principle-wise the same, because we do the same thing. You are going to encrypt your data. You are going to put in place strong access control. You are going to, principles remain the same, right? Still implement principle of least privilege and others, but the implementation of it is a bit different. You have to know your way around. So for cloud security, all that we are doing is we are implementing policies, standards, best practices that will help us to keep our cloud, set up our cloud infrastructure safe. So going back to Capital One, they didn't really implement this well. That is how an attacker, there was a silly misconfiguration that an attacker was easily able to get their hands on. And if this, lady wasn't boasting online with her real account, they didn't even go to the dark web. She was online where everybody is boasting. She is able to hack Capital One, and she has the data and trying to sell, not even sell, I think and she also posted it on GitHub. Right. So don't know what she was thinking, but that was what got her in trouble. And Capital One didn't even know. So if she took it and she just sat on it, didn't cough, didn't mention it to anybody, they wouldn't have known, right? She could have been selling it on the dark web. They wouldn't have known, right? So such silly misconfigurations clearly show they were not applying, proper security policy practices, controls, and the technology, such as good identity and access management, best practices, data loss prevention, best practices, and, to secure the environment from unauthorized access. So why is cloud security important? Everything that we've said up to this point clearly shows. And the most important is you don't want to be fined, or you don't want to lose $80 million plus if your company gets breached and it borders on cloud. It's not just if it borders on cloud. If you get breached, you get breached. But for cloud security, if you are doing everything right, you are not going to run into such problems, right? So why is cloud security important? For data protection, for compliance, threat prevention, trust, and reputation. So guess, Capital One got sued by the government, but guess who else took Capital One to the cleanest? Customers. Their stocks went down. Customers sued them from all different angles, and their problems just kept going on. But because it's a big company and they have good cybersecurity insurance and others, they are also going to drag insurance companies along, and some of the money is going to come from other places. So they were able to survive, right? If it's a medium to small company, they would have probably collapsed or gone bankrupt, right? And also business continuity. So these are some of the reasons why we do cloud security, right? And before we jump into all the fun part again, if folks who are looking to break into cybersecurity, our cybersecurity entry-level course is the place to be. This is your gateway into a lucrative 6-figure remote cybersecurity job. And, we have students on here or workers now, cybersecurity professionals who went through this, and they can attest to that, right? So we will show you the right way, and we'll guide you through the whole entire time. And also for our PCI DSS training, if you're already in the IT space, or you've done cybersecurity, you're already a cybersecurity professional, you can specialize in this area as well. The most lucrative area in cybersecurity so far, right? And then for folks who need to get their hands dirty working on real-world cybersecurity projects, if you have no experience in cybersecurity, you can learn all you want, but during interviews, it is going to show you only know you've not done anything. So it's different from knowing, and it's different, knowing and doing, they are two different things. So you want to demonstrate during your interviews that you've done projects in the cybersecurity space. And if you've done projects, it's very obvious in your delivery, right? So if you want to be working on projects and get your hands dirty, get the real world cybersecurity experience, then get into our internship that is starting on the 21st of next month, right? So, and our conference also still coming out, Maryland, October 25th to 27th. And then also, so before we get into the service models, we will be running a very short Labor Day promotion. We are going to send that out tomorrow. So for folks who are looking to join the internship, entry level, just be on the lookout. An opportunity for you to cut down some of the costs and to jump into it ASAP. So with that, we are going to move into cloud security models. So for cloud security, if you want to do cloud security, you have to understand certain things. One, an example of which that I gave, right, is knowing who is responsible for what, right? Because there are two players in here: the entity using the service, the entity who owns the service. So who is responsible for what? Now we can't jump into that without knowing some of these things that we are going to look at. So cloud service models. What are cloud service models? In the cloud, we have to understand what service we are buying, right? As an entity, if you want to patronize any cloud service, what type of service are we buying? And we have three main service models, right? So let's take it to the storage, space for you to really have a better understanding of this. And for storage, if what we are normally used to, you go there and they just have the storage space, you put your stuff in there, right? What if they had it where instead of them, everything is built, you just have to use? They had it where you can go in there and build part of the storage and have it your way how you want it, right? That would be cool. Or that wouldn't. Because, after that, then who is going to, that will be a subject for a different discussion. But in the cloud space, the beauty about it is you can choose to just use the storage, have it, everything is done, you just use it. So all you have to do is they'll give you the key, you put in your stuff and you lock it, right? Or they can have it where they just have the land, and then they put some structures on the land where you can build on and then build your storage itself, like the space itself. Or they have it where you just have to build the storage. They have the land, the structures in place, what we will call the infrastructure, and you just build your own platform on it and build your storage. Or they'll have everything together with a platform and you build your storage space on there, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Now, these are the three models that we use in the cloud space. We call it infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, right? Now, what do we mean by infrastructure as a service, platform as a service? So if you look at the data center, they have everything right there. You can choose to, depending on what the company wants. If this is a company that builds software, they can either choose to have the infrastructure which is owned and managed. Infrastructure is owned and managed by the service provider, right? So what constitutes the infrastructure? The hardware and mostly the operating system that will be running that hardware. Right. So everything, the hardware, the physical security of it, the logical security of the hardware, and some of the underlying operating systems. Yes. Now for the platform, that is where you are going to build the software that is going to house your actual application that you're going to build. Right. We will get into all the details of that. So you can choose to either rent the infrastructure, or you can choose to rent the platform, or you can choose to just use the last version, that is, they just have the space, you are going to use it. Right. So the last one is software. So mostly what we are doing, I'm using Zoom. Zoom is a software that has already been built. I don't have to do anything with Zoom. I just have to create an account, and that's it. I'm using it. So Zoom, they are the ones responsible for the Zoom software, the platform it runs on, and then the infrastructure. So if they are also using AWS, then it means Zoom can choose to purchase the platform, which comes with the infrastructure already, and they just build the software on it, right? Or if they have some special need, they can choose to just rent the infrastructure, build their own platform, and then build their software on top of it, right? So hopefully everybody gets that piece. Now, depending on which of these you choose, we are going to look at something that we call shared responsibilities, right? So, the question of who is responsible, we're like AWS, Capital One, right? Now we will really be able to understand who is really responsible for it. And there will be no questions about it. So if you are responsible for A, B, and C, and you drop the ball on that, don't look at anybody's face. It is on you, right? And only you. So your customers, if they have to come chase you with sticks and stones, it's just you. It's not your service provider. And if it's the service provider's fault, they don't have to look at you, right? So before we get into the responsibilities, we are going to also look at cloud deployment models. And all these, we cannot get really in depth into all of them. We have a cloud class coming up. So if you are interested in learning more about the cloud, just be on the lookout. There is a cloud program, a very structured program that is going to make you a pro in the cloud side of security. So we have what we call cloud deployment models. We have the public, private, community, and hybrid, right? Now, what is the difference between the service models and this deployment models? And this kind of makes it a bit confusing. Is it, or is it not? Now, this is simply how you are using the cloud. So we are not even discussing the service. The service, guess what? The cloud service model, it only applies here on this side. So hopefully everybody can see my mouse. The public cloud is where we have the service models. For private, we don't have service models. For cloud, for community, still, community kind of is private, but it's being used by 2 or 3 more entities. And then the hybrid, also the service model will play a role here, because with the hybrid, you are using either public, private together with on-prem network, right? So this is simply how some of the deployment models. So for public cloud, is everybody has access to it. AWS, they rent it out to anybody and everybody, right? If you have money to buy it, they'll rent it to you. For private, it belongs to your company. So this data center that we are using as a cloud belongs to your company. It's managed and run by your company. For community, you have 2 or more companies using one cloud, and that is what we call the community cloud. And for hybrid, you are using on-prem, so your wired network, and combining that with the cloud. So the cloud that you're combining with can be public cloud, or it can be a community cloud or private cloud, right? So the service models that we looked at, it applies to only the public side, because for private, you own and run everything. If you mess up, nobody cares. It's just on you. For the community still owned and run by 2 or 3 of these companies, it is on them, right? So if they mess up, it's on them, nobody else. For hybrid, if you are using public with your on-prem, that is hybrid, you still have a part to play in the service models that we discussed, right? Hopefully, this is not confusing anyone. Now, we have something that we call the shared responsibility model. The shared responsibility model is what helps us to determine who is responsible for what. So like the example that we looked at, when Capital One was breached, now if we have to go to court or we have to look at whose fault whose fault was this, guess what is going to help us? This right here, the shared responsibility model. Now, somebody also mentioned that we have to look at the service level agreement. Yes. And guess what is going to be in the service level agreement? Right here. The shared responsibility model is going to be in there, and they are going to state categorically clear who is responsible for it, right? So with the shared responsibility model, it helps us to determine who is responsible for what part of the service. So with the shared responsibility model, we cannot discuss that without going back to the service models that we are looking at. So for the infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, this helps us to identify who is responsible for what. So if you look at this diagram, look at the blue on here. The blue is you. So you is the company that is using the service, right? So maybe Eretmis is using AWS. So you here is Eretmis. Now, everything in orange, if this is orange, everything in orange is the cloud service provider. So the owner of the cloud is in orange. So what you can see here is based on the type of service, cloud service model you are using, it will determine what your responsibilities are, right? So if you are using on-prem or your own private cloud, everything is your responsibility. So this is you. Everything is you, right? If you are using infrastructure as a service, it means that the infrastructure that is being provided or that you are renting, the security of the infrastructure is on the company who is renting this service to you. Hopefully that is clear. Now, everything aside the infrastructure, you are responsible for. So the platform, the software, you are responsible for. So if you just rented the infrastructure and your software got breached or your platform got breached, don't look at anybody. Look at yourself, because it is on you. In the shared responsibility, you are responsible for the platform and the software. So the operating system, the middleware, and the runtime, this forms the platform. You are responsible for that. The application and the data is also the software. You are responsible for that also as well. Now, if you choose to use platform, you choose to rent platform as a service, or you choose to rent a platform from AWS or any of these cloud service providers, then you are responsible only for the software you are going to build or the application you are going to build on the platform. Everything else will be managed, or who is responsible for everything else for the platform and for the infrastructure. The owner, which is AWS or Azure, they are responsible for this. So if there's a breach and the attackers were able to breach the platform, it's not your fault, it's AWS's fault. So at that point, AWS will have themselves to blame. If they were able to breach the infrastructure, that will be on AWS. Now, if you are using software as a service, it means that the platform is the infrastructure is built already. Platform is built, software is built. You just have to use it. The example that I gave, I'm using Zoom. I don't know how the Zoom application was made or how it's being protected. I don't know which platform they are using and where it's located at, or from which service provider, or if it is their own. I don't know the infrastructure that is being run on. And for the most part, I care, but I don't care when it comes to responsibility. It is their responsibility. And for the current part of my company or the current part of me is to make sure that before I get in business with any of these cloud service providers, if I want to be sure that they are doing everything right in terms of providing good security for either platform, infrastructure, or software, I have to do what? Anybody remembers what you have to do before you work with a third party?
Do a risk assessment. Do a questionnaire assessment.
Yeah, we do that during internship. Third-party risk assessment, right? That is why we do third-party risk assessments. So you do your risk assessment on them, third-party risk assessment on them. You get all the necessary documentation and evidence to show that, yes, they are taking security seriously. They are doing everything right when it comes to security. So then you can move into business with them. And, every year you are still going to do a review of their third party, their risk assessment, right? To make sure they are still good. But when it comes to responsibilities, if something happens, if there's a breach, this is what is going to save you, right? And everybody, we all in the industry have agreed on this. This is going to be in your service level agreements, right? So this is where cloud security begins. Alex, please go ahead.
So if I understand that on premises is the cheapest and the software as a service is really expensive, if I understand it that way?
No, so we are not even talking about price or pricing here. Now, everything on-prem is expensive because it's being run and operated by you, right? Anything in the cloud is a bit flexible and a bit cost-effective, right? Because everything else is being run in terms of the hardware and everything. The data center is being run by somebody else, not you, right?
Got it.
So
Okay, thank you.
on-prem, everything on-prem, on-prem is expensive. So it's like you saying, instead of renting a storage to put your stuff, you are going to buy a land and build 2 storage spaces and store your stuff, right? How cheap or expensive is that as compared to just renting a storage space from like a storage company, right? So look at it from that perspective. So building your own, getting a land and building your own storage is pretty expensive, right? But renting one that has been built by a company, that is all that they do, that is pretty simple. Because if you don't need a storage anymore, guess what? You just take your stuff out and say, hey, I don't need it anymore. So from moving on next month, I'm not going to pay. Now, if you built it yourself and you don't need it anymore, then you are stuck with it, right? So yes, hopefully everybody gets that twist. All right, so this is where your cloud security begins, right? And we are going to look into some of the challenges associated with cloud security. And we'll look at some of the cloud security solutions that are out there, and we wrap up. We're trying to do exactly an hour today. So for cloud security, some of the problems and issues that, for that really encourages us or that should, caution us to pay specific attention to cloud security is the following. So lack of visibility, misconfiguration, access management, dynamic work loads, and then also compliance. So lack of visibility because you don't really operate, like the cloud is not being run by you or the data center is not being run by you. Sometimes is a bit difficult, unlike your on-prem that you have visibility on everything. In the cloud or somebody running the show is a bit, difficult. So, and then also misconfiguration. So misconfiguration is, guess what? The leading cause of most data breaches in the cloud environments. That is, very silly, but yes, that is the leading cause of most data breaches in the cloud. So misconfiguration is one of the big things that we have to also look at. And how do we solve that? By making sure our solutions architects and our AWS, our cloud folks are well trained. Access management, also one of the issues that we have in the cloud, or one of the challenges, and dynamic workflows. So making sure we're able to scale up and down as we need. It's also being able to do that in the cloud. That is one thing that we also have to look at without sacrificing security, right? And then compliance in the cloud, we might introduce like other compliance or other regulatory compliance obligations to what we already have as a company, right? So we are going to move on to the types of cloud security solutions, and we are going to wrap up for tonight. So maybe some cyber chats down the line, we will do a part 2 of this and go a little bit more in depth. And then, if you join the cloud class that is coming up, you are going to learn a whole lot more, and not just learn, but actually do, because Eretmis, we are all about doing, not just learning, right? So cloud security is constantly changing, is moved a whole lot. It has evolved from when it started all the way up to this point. There are a lot of solutions out there. We are going to look at some of it, by no means all of it, but some of it. So we are going to touch briefly on them. The first solution, cloud solution that you have to really pay specific attention to is identity and access management solutions. So the purpose of this is to manage your access into the cloud environment. And this is where everything starts, right? If you fail in the identity and access management side, then it means everybody will be able to have access to your cloud environment, and you don't want that. Because if they have access to your cloud environment, then that is it, it's game over, right? So the goal, or some of the key features, implementing multi-factor authentication, strong access control, and then single sign-on, really not single sign-on wouldn't really be considered. It's a key feature here, but it's not like a security measure. So that is the key word that I was trying to use. So single sign-on, I kind of make things a bit easier for us, not to make it too redundant, but not necessarily a security feature, right? But user authentication, access control, using multi-factor authentication, yes, all those are security features that we can use. Now, what are some of the examples of other identity and access management solutions that are out there today? When you take AWS, they have their IMA or IAM. For Azure, they have their Active Directory that they use for identity and access management. And one standalone one is Okta, which most companies are using also as well. And that is a cloud security solution. Now we are going to look at the next one, that is data encryption solution. Now, when we are moving data from point A to point B, we have to, best security practice, we have to encrypt it from point A to point B. And there are a lot of solutions in the cloud. On-prem, how we approach it, a bit easy and straightforward. In the cloud, it gets a bit tricky, right? Now, the good part about, or somewhat good part about the cloud environment is because we cannot take our on-prem solutions, security solutions into the cloud, most of the cloud service providers, they've come up with their own inside cloud security solutions, right, that we can use. Example is, Azure and Google and the rest, they have their own. For example, their data encryption solutions, they have their own. So AWS, they have their KMS. Azure has the Key Vault, and Google has the Cloud Key Management solution, right? Isaac, kindly hold one. I'll bring you in. If your question is directly on the data encryption solution, you can go. Either than that, you can hold one, and we will run to a good stopping point, and we can bring you in. So for the key features, encrypting data in transit, data at rest, and then also managing your cryptographic keys and your cryptographic and your PKI, public key infrastructure itself, right? And so these are some of the solutions that are out there. So if you are using AWS, you don't have to bring in an outside cloud solution. You can use what they have in there. If you are using any of these services, you can use what they are inbuilt one that they are running. Now we have cloud security posture management. Also, we have on-prem tools that helps us to do this in the cloud. we have a couple of, some of these tools, and some of the examples, Palo Alto's, they have a tool. I mean, Palo Alto, aside firewalls, they have other solutions as well. Checkpoint, CloudGuard, and then Microsoft also they have their Defender for the cloud. Now, this solution helps to monitor and it gives us the security posture of our cloud environment, in real time. It works similar to what a SIM tool would do, right? And for key features, configuration management, compliance, and automated remediation, it helps us to do all that as well, right? So with that, we'll move into cloud access security broker or brokers. So your cloud access security brokers, this is one of the pioneer solutions when the cloud, became a big part of what we do in the security space. It sits as a solution. It acts kind of like similar to a firewall thereabout, but not a firewall per se. And it sits between your cloud environment and your on-prem. So for companies that are using hybrid solutions, so using your on-prem and then using cloud, this sits in between to help and make ensure that traffic, it is monitoring traffic going back and forth, and it is protecting traffic both ways, right? So key features, it helps us with visibility. Data loss prevention is also inbuilt into this. So if somebody is trying to exfiltrate data from either in cloud, on-prem, or moving the other way around, it will be able to catch it. And we have threat protection as well. We have similar solutions, similar examples like the ones that we looked at. Microsoft has its own, Netspoke, and then McAfee also has another version of that as well. So, and there is a lot. This is by no means all of it. So we are going to move on to firewall as a service. So for the as a service model, you see a lot of things as a service now. We have SOC as a service. We have everything as a service, right? So as a service, they all came out of the three service models: the original service model, platform, infrastructure. That is how all these, anything that is being done in the cloud, if they want to, kind of follow that trend, they will add as a service to it. So, this is firewall that is being operated in the cloud, right? So firewall as a service or firewall in the cloud does the same work as firewall on-prem, right? But this is configured. Everything is being run in the cloud. Now it helps with traffic filtering, intrusion prevention, and also access application level security. And for examples, Palo Alto, obviously one of the big names in firewall. Amazon has its own firewall manager. Azure has its own firewall. Google has its own also as well. So these are some of the firewall examples that we have. Now we have compliance management tools as well. Now these tools are used obviously for compliance audits and for policy enforcement and reporting. And some of the examples that we have in terms of products, Amazon, AWS has its own, Azure has Azure policy, IBM has cloud compliance, and this tool helps us with everything and anything compliance related within our cloud infrastructure. Now we have SIM tools also in there. Originally, we cannot have the traditional SIM tools that we have on-prem, in there, but the traditional tools, the owners of all these vendors, they've also created their cloud versions, right? So Splunk, we have Splunk Cloud. QRadar has the cloud version. Azure has its own. For AWS, I'm not really sure what they call their SIM type of tool. But for others, Qualys, they also have cloud versions, and Qualys actually is a vulnerability scanning tool. And Nexus, they all have cloud versions. So we didn't look at vulnerability scanning tools, but all the traditional tools, they all have their cloud versions now, because they also want to, capture some of the cloud market, right? But for QRadar, for Splunk, and other SIM tools, they all have their cloud versions now. Now, SIM tools, they help us to actually see in real time the security posture of our cloud environment, or the security posture of our security, like the security posture of the whole entire organization. So if you are using it on-prem and in the cloud, it will help us to see both at the same time. So it collects, analyze, correlates security data across cloud and our on-prem setup as well. Now we have cloud load protection platforms. So for that also, it helps us to run our workloads in the cloud effectively and efficiently. So including your virtual machines, your containers, your serverless functions. The cloud workload protection platform helps us to smoothly run that. Now, some of the key features: runtime protection, vulnerability scanning, compliance enforcement, and some of the examples. We have Aqua Security, we have Trend Micro, Deep Security, and others, McAfee and others also as well. Right now, I think we are running to the end. We selected 8 or 9, so we will be running up here shortly. Now, disaster recovery as a service. So I was talking about the as a service twist to this. So for disaster recovery, and then they also have some incident response as a service tools out there. This helps us with disaster recovery if there is an incident of some sort. When we have to do the disaster recovery side, this is what we use in the cloud. So it helps us with data backup, failover management, recovery as well. And kindly hold on. All right. Some of the examples that we have: AWS, they have their own disaster recovery, Azure Site Recovery, and others that are out there. So with that, we are just going to look at some of the benefits. Now, some of the benefits, I think everybody on here can talk about at least 2 or 3 of the benefits. All that we've looked at kind of speaks to, the benefits that we are gaining from the cloud. So aside all that the cloud is providing us as a company, the security side, some of the benefits for using some of these tools, eventually it is going to get us out of trouble. We're not going to be fined and lose all that money. That money can go towards the company developing and building to where it needs to be, right? So the cloud security tools that we looked at, it helps with really automating and being able to do this seamlessly, right? So I'm going to go back to the question. So some of the security benefits: high visibility or greater visibility, central security, reduced cost, data protection, right? And there are other benefits that we didn't list here. There are ones like your goodwill with your customers and all other ones that are beyond security, right? So before we move on, getting back to the question of whose fault was it? Now, how do you answer that question? The Capital One case study that we looked at, whose fault was it? How would you determine that now, knowing what you know? How would you determine, or what questions would you ask to be able to identify whose fault was this?
It'll be based on their whether they have what kind of platform they have, like a software as a service or platform as a service or
so their service
infrastructure
model
as a service.
So the service model that they were using is what we have to go to first. Yes. So
yes.
Now, if we go to that and we know, okay, what were you guys using? So if they were using, for instance, if they were using, let's say, platform as a service, then whose fault is this going to be? Because it was their, the bridge wasn't on the infrastructure. It wasn't on the platform. So if they were using just infrastructure as a service, then it means you are responsible for everything else. The platform, the software, right? If they were using platform as a service, then it means AWS will be responsible for the platform and the infrastructure. So the software on there, if the bridge was within the software, then they will be at fault, right? So you see how now you'll be able to really analyze this, without just blindly
Dr.
saying, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, but Dr. Du, I think for my understanding, I think the problem is from Capital One, and then misconfiguration is the problem that they have. That's why they were being attacked, because their fundamentals are weak.
Okay, so still going back to the analysis, right? If the misconfiguration was in the platform and they were using platform as a on the purchase platform as a service, who is responsible for the platform? AWS. Right. If the misconfiguration was in the infrastructure and they were using the service that they purchased was either platform as a service or infrastructure as a service, AWS will still be responsible for this. Right.
Yes.
So whatever if we look at all problems in the cloud or all security issues that way, and that is how we're supposed to look at it, it'll help us to easily analyze, okay, it is your fault, right? So for us, if we are the referees, we'll be able to easily say, no, it is your fault, Alex. There is no way around that, right? And that is also going to be in your service level agreement, right? All right. So Eliku, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think you mentioned that the hacker was an or was AWS engineer.
No, she used to be.
Oh, okay.
She wasn't like a current employee. She used to be, so she knew her way around AWS.
Exactly.
Right.
So I was gonna say, if she was a current employee, then part of the fault is with AWS, because it's about her having access as an employee that gave her that ability to hack. But if she was an ex, then that means AWS did something or didn't do something that allowed her to still be able to access AWS and then navigate her way around.
No, so she didn't access it through AWS. Right. She came out like anybody will try to breach your network or your cloud from the outside. She wasn't an insider who had privileges within AWS so they could, override things. She was totally coming from the outside, right? So now we have to look at, what did she break? Was it the application, or was it the platform? Was it the infrastructure? Right. And what service model or what service did Capital One purchase? Did they purchase just infrastructure as a service? So then they will be responsible for the platform and the application, or were they using platform as a service? So they will be responsible for only the application they are putting on the platform. Right. So hopefully now we are going to get into this nice analysis to be able to figure out what is going on in any cloud breach or any problems that we run into. So in wrapping up, if you're looking to break into cybersecurity, for everything that you've gone through, if you are in the paid class, then obviously you are going to learn more and get more support. So get into our entry-level course. And for those who want to specialize in the PCI space, the most lucrative space in the cybersecurity niche, the most lucrative niche in cybersecurity, arguably, get into our PCI class. And then for folks who are lacking the working experience in cybersecurity, don't go to interviews talking about things you've memorized. Go to interviews talking about things that you can actually do, that you've done, right? Things that you can do. How are you going to help the company, right? So if you worked on all the projects we're going to work on here, you are going to set yourself apart. And on the job, you are not going to be a walking heart attack, right? You are not going to be paid 6 figures just to have high blood pressure because you don't know what you are doing. And you are always on the edge of your seat thinking somebody is going to, discover that you don't know what you are doing. So get your hands dirty working on real world projects. And this is going to help set you apart. There have been a couple of most of our family members on here, those who've gone through, I think our last 2 cyber chats that we did, 3, when we had Felix told us that he literally moved into his role that he's in now, and he was doing exactly the same thing we're doing during the internship, right? So that goes to let you know that, hey, what we are doing here is what is actually out there that you're going to be working on, right? So with that, also for kindly show your intention for the upcoming conference. We are going to post in the chat for you to be able to, show your intention or to join, and then more details will follow, right? We're still waiting for the number that we're waiting for. We've not had that number yet. That is not, we've not come up with pricing and all that, right? So kindly make sure you are showing your intent. So if you want to, come to the conference, don't wait and think other people are going to show their intent and we're going to use that for the planning. You are also part of the family, right? And for our WhatsApp group, kindly join if you've not already joined, and that is if there is space. And for folks on here, if you want to talk to Dr. Edu, if you want to reach out for help on anything, our details are also going to be posted. So you can go ahead and take that, make an appointment, and we will, address and help you out in any way best possible. So on that note, kindly hold one whilst we post all the links and you'll be able to take care of it. And for Labor Day, we are going to come up with something. We are going to come up with something for Labor Day. So just be on the lookout. So whilst we wait, we're just going to go ahead and post this. So all the information that you need is on here. If you didn't already post Team Live, kindly do post Team Live in there. Take a screenshot of it. You can use it for your continuous education, educational points for renewing your certifications. And all the links have been posted for appointment links. And for everybody on here, if you've not taken any of our free courses, go to eretmisacademy.com, take our free PCI and free entry-level course as well. And then also, one big announcement that we didn't get to make, but all that information is going to follow up. So we are coming up with our GRC interview prep. It's going to be a very robust interview prep session. We take you through questions. So even if you don't have an interview, we are still going to go through and take you through interview questions, prep you and prepare you before you even get the interview. And information for that is on the way. We still couldn't wrap up all of it. They delayed me a little bit. So we are going to roll that out this week, and come next Cyber Chat, we are going to really open the floor and discuss that extensively. So that is a service that we are going to be pushing out, and that is going to help a lot of folks on here. We've done a lot of cyber, I think, interview prep, sessions. And for this, what we are going to push out, we are going to have some of, our family members join, but it's going to be spearheaded by ISOSA, and we are going to have other folks also join and help as well. So kindly be on the lookout. Somebody was asking in there, the entry level, when is it starting? So for the entry level, we have it set up really in a very nice way. For the entry level is for the first portion, going through the training and the hands-on. It is self-paced, so you can start at any time. The internship, we start one cohort every month, thereabout. So you can start, and then when there is internship ready, you jump onto the internship, right? All right, everyone. I appreciate everybody's time. Have a great weekend. We went a little bit overboard, and also thank you for the time change. That really came unexpected. We started at 8 instead of 7, as usual, but next week we are going back to 7. So have a great weekend, everyone. And hopefully everybody, you had something from this. Like I always say, if you join us, you're going to have something for your toolbox. So happy learning. What you got here, don't let it sit. Go research more into it and become better security professionals. I appreciate everybody's time. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Good night, Dr. Edu.